Yes. Good evening. Welcome to the 5th edition of As the Select Board Turns. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
I've run out of what to call it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will open up with an open forum since we have our town clerk here to give us some inspiring words, I'm sure. That's
No pressure.
None. Okay. I just came to talk a little bit more about moving the election from the high school to the middle school. We did meet with the state, and they did the survey and determined that we would be able to use the middle school without any issues for the annual town election and any special town election we may have in the future. The state did request that we specifically do the vote so that it would be just for the annual town election and special town election. So we might have to redo it. But the caveat to this is that I did receive the quote for the mailing that we would need to do to be able to move the election, and it was about $6,000. I'm required to do it to every registered voter in East Bridgewater. We're determining right now if I can maybe do it to every household that has a registered voter, which is technically what the law says. So that might come down a little bit, but I don't know that it would come down a lot. And I still personally see the benefit of moving it, but I know that it's primarily up to you where we hold the election. And I just wanted to be available to answer any questions if you had anything from my conversation with the state or from the company that would be doing the mailing.
Do we have this scheduled for next week's agenda to talk about this?
We don't have the agenda yet.
Okay.
But I also think you're under a time limit.
Yeah. So I have to do the mailing at least 20 days before the election. So I would,
Coming right up against.
yeah, ideally it would be, in that they have to print it and
Right.
get it all ready.
Right.
So if possible, it would be great to,
Get a decision
yeah.
tonight.
Right. Well, I'm still 100% moving. I mean, I'm not going to waver off that, even with the money. I'm assuming this is just a one-time fee. Like, we're not, once we tell them, we're done.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we don't waver. It'll
Right.
always, all annual town elections and all special town elections will be at this location.
Right.
We do have the ability to grow at that location because there is a second space that would be available to us
Jim, yeah.
if we were to have a contentious race or something where we would expect a larger turnout.
Right.
Which was one of my concerns. In regards to the setup, the space is acclimated for parking, and as of right now, there's no issues with the space.
No, they've had it there for years. I mean, it was there before we moved it up here for a long time. Again, I understand the monetary issue that we end up with, but to me, that what goes on over here with, the high school and the events and stuff just outweighs the monetary amount. That's just my feeling, personally.
I was all on board with that until I saw the cost. And now with the cost factored in, now I'm leaning more towards keeping it and then being able to say to people, look, we looked into it, we did, our due diligence, we talked about it, but given the cost, maybe we shouldn't. So you are gonna break this tie.
Well, as everyone knows, I was against it from the very beginning. I gave in because I knew I was going to lose that one, but I just, most of the people that have been involved in this were not here when we did the switch over from the middle school to the high school to begin with, and for 3 years after, we were still getting all this. Granted, I don't think back then we sent out any, I don't know if we sent anything out to the registered voters or not, to alert them we were moving to the junior, senior high school. I have no idea about that.
I think you did.
Yeah, we would have had to.
Well, in that case, I can tell you it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Yeah, because we were, 2 years later, we were still getting the same questions, why weren't we there?
Okay.
And again, I know we have contracts and everything else over here, but, you know, has anyone tried to negotiate doing something with that?
They've got it for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's a non-starter.
So we would need, we've talked about having the detail officer there.
Yeah.
We'd put up some signage, ropes or whatever else to signify one specific area is for voters only. And we have an officer to try and enforce that as well as possible.
And what do you anticipate the cost of that would be?
Something like, more like 500, probably like $50 an hour, something on that order.
I think my detail was 1,100.
Okay, because did you have two officers or one?
Well, I always will have an officer in the polling location, and I did have an officer
But we-
outside.
Okay, but we would have that first officer in the polling location no matter what.
Right.
So take it in half
The
to have
additional
so
cost.
the additional cost would be $550.
I think it was just for the one officer outside.
It was
I
1,100?
think so, yeah. I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's still less than
I-
60.
It's still, yeah.
I can't imagine that for the polling hours for the, maybe that was for the,
It was for the
regular
presidential.
Right,
You're
which
right.
is
when
long.
we had
It's
a
much
lot more
longer.
hours.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think, you know what, people are gonna be upset with, either way, right?
Right.
People are either gonna be upset because they're gonna go to the high school and the parking is gonna be atrocious and they're not gonna like that. Or they're gonna be upset that they go to the high school and then the location isn't there. Or they're gonna go to the middle school and they're not gonna, what's gonna make them the least upset is the,
Right.
That's an unknown.
we haven't always won on this one in the past when we've tried to figure it out.
That's correct. All right, let's, what do you want to do?
I say we leave it alone. Are you all right with that?
No.
Okay.
That's fine, though. I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I could vote, I mean,
Make
we
a
don't have to
motion.
be.
I
yeah.
make a motion, do I need to make a motion if we're not
Yeah,
making a change?
I think it would be helpful just to
Yes,
have it
'cause
on
we
the record.
already
Okay, I
had
make
made
a
a motion.
motion that we keep the town election and special elections at the current location at the junior, senior high school.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry, Katie. Can try it again.
Okay.
Try it again next year, and I'm sure the cost will go down.
Oh, you'll hear
yeah,
about it. You'll hear about it.
Definitely.
Guaranteed.
I know, we will. I know.
I won't, but.
You'll come in on the winning side on this one.
All right, let's move along to a interview with John.
DeZalo.
Zalo.
We already had
You
this
know how to say that
conversation.
one? John.
We had this conversation, he told me not to
So
bother
you-
trying.
If you had the job, you'd
Jack?
always be Chief John.
Jack,
That's easy.
the door needs to stay open.
Yes.
Yes.
We shut it before, because the other candidates were out there, in case they came early.
John, welcome to our humble abode here.
Thank you for having me.
And Jack will proceed.
Okay. So, John, we have a series of questions to ask you over the next 20 minutes. We want you to answer them completely but succinctly. If you can answer them in just a few words, that's fine. But we do want you to answer them completely. But if you only get through the first question, we don't get through the rest, the interview won't be a good interview, just so you know.
Thank you.
So, and then at the end, if we have some additional time, there'll be, could be some questions from the board.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
So I'd like you to start the process by telling us a little bit about yourself, why the East Bridgewater Fire Department and the town of East Bridgewater is a good professional fit for you.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is John DeZalo. The last name's a little bit tough to pronounce, but I'm a shift captain with the town of Easton. I've been with Easton just under 18 years. I worked my way up through the ranks from firefighter to lieutenant to captain. I'm also a paramedic. During that time, I've worked hard at developing myself, my career, by taking on different roles as safe coordinator, training officer, fire prevention officer, and the such. That's my work life. At home, I'm married, got 2 amazing kids. I live, I actually measured it out, it's 5.5 miles from the station, just down south, down 18 in the town of Bridgewater. So I'm very familiar with the community and what goes on here. And then outside of work, I do a lot of community work on the board of directors of a local nonprofit. I am heavily involved in my kids' sports with coaching and whatnot and volunteering, as well as other volunteer efforts, which is important to me. As far as being a good fit for East Bridgewater, I'm familiar with the community, born and raised in Bridgewater, so just down the street. I know in researching what's gone on in the fire department or where the fire department is now, it seems very similar to what we dealt with in Easton. The call volume, the staffing levels is similar to what I started with in Easton, although Easton's bigger size-wise and population-wise now, but it started off very similar to what East Bridgewater is going through now. So having some experience with that, I think would be make me a good fit for this role. There's other things too that I'm sure we'll get into that would be helpful.
John, in your view, is there a difference between leadership and management?
100%. Leadership, management kind of comes with the rank. I was actually, not that strong a reader, so I listened to audiobooks. And the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was just recently talking about that. Gives an example about how, leadership, management is, putting the ladder against the building and knowing that it's there. Management's that. Leadership is knowing the ladder is on the right building. So there's definitely a difference. To be a good leader, you don't have to have rank or a specific role. There's a lot of leaders throughout fire departments all throughout that can get people to bring the most out of themselves. Management is more to keep people in line and make sure that the jobs and the tasks are getting accomplished. So definitely different.
What type of a leader would you say you were?
As far as to quote the leadership styles, I think if I had to choose one, I'd say more democratic. I think it's important to get the opinions, not for everything, but get the opinions for those who you work with. There are times where an autocratic style is more important. And then, when it comes to being a paramedic and a shift officer, laissez-faire, I see, was, kind of in the back of the ambulance. We have great paramedics where I work right now, and I don't need to get involved with that. So I'd say more democratic.
The next few years will test the financial management and creativity of local governments. Please describe your experience or ideas in dealing with constrained resources and your ideas to contain and reduce costs while maintaining a high level of service.
Well, I think the best way of doing it is through grants. We know budgets are tight. They're getting tighter and tighter every year. There's not enough new growth. Contracts are making salaries a little bit higher every year. But there's a job that we have to do. And I think through grants and other subsidies, it's important to exercise that option to try and help supplement budgets.
Have you had an experience in writing grants?
I have written a few. I did one AFG grant it's a number of years ago. I had some experience kind of filling in a void when we were down a deputy fire chief in Easton. So I was able to step up, write a full grant for a new fire engine. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. I think our data wasn't strong enough to support replacing a frontline apparatus as opposed to we were getting rid of a reserve piece. So obviously data is important. I've also written SAFE grants, for that program as well. I've been doing a lot of research lately. My current role is a fire training coordinator. My next objective for the coming year was to try and work on some fire training grants and also researching some stuff on health and wellness for the department.
Okay. Could you tell us about your experience in budget creation and budget management?
Again, I had the opportunity a few years ago where we were without a deputy. And I was in the fire prevention role as a captain in the administrative office. And with the deputy not being present, I was able to fill in and step up to fill in the void during that time. I was never actually wrote a full budget, never signed off, but I'm very familiar with it. Based on my resume, prior to the fire service, I spent 7 years, in finance. So numbers don't intimidate me at all. Data and spreadsheets it's something that I'm kind of a numbers guy, so to speak. But during that time when I was kind of filling in that void, I was filling in for the chief when he wasn't there, which meant that I had to sign off on payroll on a weekly basis if he, again, wasn't present, and worked on the grants as well. One other opportunity that I got to do is we had a big storm come through Easton, and there was local aid that was going to be handed out because they declared a state of emergency. And I was able to work with the chief and build data collection data to get reimbursed for that local aid. So good experience. Again, never written or prepared a full budget, but I'm very comfortable with the process and familiar with it. I've even looked over East Bridgewater's preliminary budget for fiscal '25, just to kind of get an idea of what it's like. And nothing jumps out at me as out of the ordinary or something that I wouldn't really understand.
Okay. As a leader, how do you make sure everyone in the organization knows what's expected of them?
Strong communication. It's the foundation of any good organization. If it's going to run well, there has to be strong communication. People need to know what their expectation of what's expected of them, and there's got to be also the reverse is being able to listen to the people you work with. Because if something's not working right and you choose to ignore it or don't listen to what's going on, then it's going to end up being a bigger problem. So strong communication is paramount.
You've talked a little bit about your experience in fire prevention, but so what's your experience in fire prevention and code enforcement?
So when I was promoted to captain, the role I accepted was the fire prevention officer with the town of Easton. Only one fire prevention officer that we had, so it was just me. I did commercial and residential plan review, code enforcement, and inspections for the entire town. So I learned an impressive amount during the 5.5 years that I was in that role. On the commercial side, we dealt with a number of big projects. Stonehill College in Easton built their Welcome Center and their Business Meeting School, which are large, gorgeous buildings. So that took a lot of effort and energy. And well as we had 3 elementary schools that were outdated that were combined into one brand new elementary school, pre-K through 2, that I was heavily involved in as well. I also got the opportunity when I was in there to sit at the table with the design review team for the town. So any new projects, developers or contractors that came through with plans, got to sit down and go through, the impact on the town and how we want to get ahead of it. So I built a lot of good relationships in fire prevention.
Okay. Easton runs an ALS, Advanced Life Support Ambulance?
Correct.
Okay. As you know, retention of firefighter medics is a major concern across the Commonwealth. What can be done to retain these highly trained firefighter medics at East Bridgewater Fire?
I think if I had the perfect answer, everybody would be using it. But it's a combination of things. When we started the job, I remember looking back, as it was thought as the best job in the world. And it was important to go to work and serve your community and really be a part of, the camaraderie in the department. And I think at some point in time, we kind of lose that. Money, contracts that, individuals will start to shop around for kind of get in the way. But I think if you develop and implement a culture within the department that shows appreciation for your coworkers and your employees, hopefully that will help to bring a little bit more pride in their job. There's a window of time where most firefighters will come onto a job and then they can move freely. They know that they can transfer to another department and not lose too much seniority. After the fact, once you get, kind of over the hump a bit, you can't go anywhere. And trying to bridge the gap between those two people, I think you have the veteran firefighters that sometimes don't feel like they're listened to or appreciated. If you can bring them back into the fold and then work with the young firefighters and show them that it's a great job and a great opportunity for them to stay in town, I think you can bridge that gap. So appreciation, bring back pride, and remembering that it is truly the best job in the world.
The next two questions are situational questions. So when you were promoted to your last or current position, what was the big challenge you faced and how did you overcome it?
So it was interesting. So when I was promoted to, do you want promoted to captain or my shift?
Whatever.
Okay. So promoted to, I was originally promoted to captain of fire prevention officer. Spent 5.5 years there. But about 2 years ago is when I was moved to shift. And that was a big jump for me. When you're days and you're administrative, it's a completely different world. But I made sure I had the opportunity to do that because I needed to learn how to work with a group, manage a team, and see where my skills lacked and kind of develop them. So the biggest test, I think, or trial with that was to go back to shift from a day position and get back into the into workings of running calls and working with the team, because I was by myself in fire prevention. So, but I was successful at it. I think when I went to my shift, at the time it was maybe touted as one of maybe a little more difficult or a little more challenging than some of the other shifts in the department. But I can tell you right now, it runs like the top. Like the guys on that group are second to none, and we do really well with ourselves. So.
It's another situational question. You're the chief in East Bridgewater. You respond to a food on the stove fire call. The house is full of smoke, but very small fire. Firefighters are opening windows to let the smoke out, so they're walking around the house opening the windows. You're walking down the hall, and you see one of the firefighters taking jewelry off a dresser and put it in his pocket. What do you do?
Got to be addressed immediately. As the fire chief, I'd probably see who his direct supervisor is, and make sure that he knows that if this was witnessed. If I'm in earshot with him, I'm going to address it immediately. It also depends on the call too. If we're just ventilating smoke, if there's no active fire, it's not an active scene as that, I'm going to pull him right out and address it immediately. That's when it comes to this job, we're a professional services based on integrity, and I see no place for that. And if I catch somebody like that, it needs to be addressed immediately.
Do you send him home, or does he work the rest of the shift?
I think there would have to be some fact-finding, sit down and talk to him and find out what was going on. Maybe there was a reason for it. And again, that communication thing is very important, but so I'd open up communication lines. But based on what I saw and what it appeared to be, it's definitely something. If he didn't have a good response, a good answer, that he would be put on administrative leave and go through the proper channels of discipline and progressive discipline from there.
Okay. So, as an officer, what type of officer would your firefighters say you were?
That's a great question. Strong. I think I'm an officer that works well with the firefighters. I believe that I'm respected within the department that I'm in. I've worked myself up through the ranks, on my own. I've held leadership positions within the union. So I have been able to prove my worth and my value and where my focus is. Realistically, it comes down to everybody going home at night, and I know that the crews that I work with, whether I'm overtime or with my shift, knows that they're going to get that from me, that I'm not going to, frivolously put somebody in harm's way, and my essential goal is to everybody goes home and they'll go home safely to their family.
Okay. And if I was to call Chief Alexander, what type of employee would he say you were?
I talked to him today.
Told him what to say?
Just cleared a couple of things.
Did you record that conversation?
No, he knows that I'm in this position, and I think he would speak highly of my leadership. When I went to shift and when I went to, that more difficult group, so to speak, he knew I was the right person for the job. And I think at this point where he knows where my career is, how long I've been working at it, and the degree that I have and everything involved, he knows it's the next step. It's a natural step. So as an officer, I think he'd miss me if I were to leave and take a position elsewhere. But I think he'd be happy for me because he knows I've earned it and worked hard for it.
Okay. So we've had many interested and extremely well-qualified candidates apply for this job, yourself included. Why should the town of East Bridgewater and the East Bridgewater Fire Department hire you as their next chief?
Well, I think for a few reasons. I imagine you have my resume, and you can see where my career has gone. Starting off just under 18 years ago, working my way up through the ranks. It shows all the positions that I've worked in, whether it be safe coordinator, fire training officer, fire prevention officer. I've showed the dedication to the town and showed that I have the drive and the ability to learn and then put it back out into the department. Any voids that I don't have, or then on top of that, my experience. I feel that my experience with Easton and compared to what East Bridgewater might be going through, again, the retention and recruit problems, I have a little bit of a background on that, and I feel like I could bring that experience to East Bridgewater and certainly help move the needle forward. And not to mention, I'm big on community. It's nice to get closer to home and be a part of this community. I think, if I were to come to East Bridgewater as their fire chief, I think I could continue on with a feeling of pride with the fire department, within the membership as well as the community that it's a part of.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Carol?
Oh, I'm first.
You are.
You mentioned a culture of appreciation, and I wonder if you could give it maybe an example of how you think you would do that. We have, I think you talked about this in Easton too, like you've got the younger firefighters, you've got more experienced firefighters, and there's seems to be a divide between those groups. What would you do to try to bridge that gap as the chief?
You have to. You have to find a way, a happy medium for each. I know I've heard people, and especially in the fire service, talk about the young kids. We can't call them kids. They're professionals. They're adults. They went through the academy. They've gone through the same training. So I think by treating them in that way, that's one way of doing it. But you also have to have explain to them the importance of respect for the veterans in the department. I can remember when I was a private, I would always grab a stair chair, help lift a patient out, grab it away from the veteran firefighters. That's the type of give and take I think veterans want to see, as well as the younger firefighters have to learn. So as a fire chief, trying to show appreciation and trying to empower maybe some of the veterans a little bit more, in front of the junior members of the department, as well as working with the junior members and getting them more involved with other daily tasks and routines. In Easton, we have a number of stipend positions, and it's great because people are allowed to step up and take a role and really show their worth. And if they do a good job, then I think the rest of the department could see that. And those positions are open to veterans as well. So it's tough, but you got to find a way to make everybody feel comfortable in their environment. The veterans are a little bit more difficult because they're there for the long haul. They might feel like time has passed them by. Everybody says it's a young person's job, but you got to let them know this. They have a tacit knowledge that they can provide to the younger members and pass on their experiences, and it's important to be able to get that out of them. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, that was good, thank you. I'm done.
Peter?
Yeah, so A lot of the stuff, John, honestly, these questions that I've asked to the other candidates, your background has shown that in a lot of ways. So my questions really are answered by just the resume here. I really like the training aspect. Me and Deputy Chief Windsor talk about that all the time. The potential of training these guys, giving them the opportunities to train and learn more and move ahead. So really like that. I think the only thing I have would be, me and Dave talked about this before the meeting, is one of the things that the town of East Bridgewater is engaged in is a new safety building. We really started talking about former Chief Tim Herron, as well as Police Chief, have got together and started a group to start discussing that and what the potential is. This building down here needs some help. Even worse is the basement that we have our police in. So any background in something of that type of undertaking? If not a big deal, but is that something you'd be comfortable in, pushing this out? Because, not only do you have to do a lot of work to find out how it needs to be done, but you have to sell it to a community that sometimes doesn't like to spend money.
Yeah, 100%. So we just went through this in Easton. They just broke grounds, or they cleared the lots for, we're getting a new public safety building as well as a substation. We currently have 3 stations in Easton. We're going to go down to 2. I don't live in Easton, and it was very difficult to kind of promote the costs for that in a town. But the experience that I got during the process started with in fire prevention as a design review and figuring out what the actual cost is and whittling down. It was eye-opening, but it also showed me what we need. Easton's vote, and don't quote me on the number, but I think it only passed for funding by less than 100 votes. Oh, wow. So it was obviously a divide in the town, but it's also something that's needed. So I have experience, again, working with that transition and trying to fight for that in my current job, and certainly would take on that undertaking moving forward as well. It happens with schools as well. Sure. Schools have the advantage of the school municipal building committee that they can get subsidies, and that hopefully with the fire service, that's something that comes out, that because if the cost was a little bit less, I think it's a little bit easier to swallow. But there's obviously a need here in East Bridgewater, and I certainly would take on that fight.
Appreciate it.
John, as training coordinator, did you implement any new training ideas that you brought into the department?
I did. So a couple of things. Initially, we've had a number of transfers and new hires come in over the 2 years or just under 2 years that I've been in that role. So I immediately developed a 1 and a 2 week orientation program. The 1 week program is for transfers, just to kind of bring them into the Easton Fire Department, make sure, kind of vet them of the skills. We know they've gone through the academy, but just make sure their training and is good and they're efficient in their skills, as well as explain to how Easton runs. The 2 week was for brand new hires, and that was a preparation for them going off to the fire academy. And that, I think, kind of goes into the recruitment and retention portion. That's kind of the first impression that I feel these individuals got of the Easton Fire Department. And I took a lot of pride in trying to make sure it showed us in a great light, and it made them want to stay. They didn't regret their decision. I also developed a 12-month program for training on duty. As the fire training coordinator, I'm not a day position, it's a stipend position. So that 12-month program was based on getting what I referred to as drill yard drills, so hands-on, pulling hose, that kind of stuff, that you'd have to do 6 a year at the group's discretion, as far as timing. It was tabletop drills and it was apparatus floor drills. So it was basically a way to get the group together to go over, certain equipment, certain types of calls, and review certain tactics that we have. Based on a 12-month schedule that was kind of seasonal. So, certain time of year you're going to do ice rescue. Certain time of year you're going to do, brush fires, that kind of stuff. So I was able to develop that and implement that. The other thing, and it's important to me, and it was a big part of this, we did an ISO review a number of years ago in Easton, And the biggest deficiency we had was we didn't have enough training records. I wasn't a training officer then, and it was a few years before I got into this role. But it kind of struck me. That seems like something if we're doing the training, we should be able to have the records. So along with implementing this 12-month training program, I also developed or was able to work with the software that we have to digitally keep records of all the training that the groups are doing, in hopes of, in a year or two, call for an ISO review and hopefully get better ISO standing or reading than what we got initially. Where that was a big demerit, to me, it seemed like a focus that the training officer should be working on. So,
The previous 7 years, you said you were in finance. How much did that bring to your career as you went along?
Professionalism.
Yeah.
It's different in the finance world, and when I came into the fire service, it's certainly different. But I think I carry myself in a different way than most firefighters. I've seen what it's like in the private sector versus the public sector. It's really different. So I think I bring a different mindset or perspective when it comes to contract talks, negotiation, budget shortfalls, because sometimes we don't see the forest through the trees when numbers and that stuff comes out. So I learned that and got a good look at that before coming to the fire service.
Good. I noticed in your resume, in 1999, you were the Employee of the Year for Good Samaritan Hospital.
I keep that on there
Can you
because
explain that?
I worked at the Good Samaritan Medical Center years ago. It was my first job out of college. It was, I don't know, they did it, I don't know why I got it, to be honest with you. I came to work every day, I did a good job. Somebody obviously saw that and appreciated that. I was a kid, at that point in time, but I put that on there with pride, because
Okay.
why not? Why not?
Appreciate it.
Started early.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
No, not good.
No, I like the private, public sector thing you just brought up.
We knew you
Yes.
would.
Somebody else brings that up all the time, the difference.
And
It's
I've never done
really
anything
different.
but the public sector, so
Yeah.
I see it from that perspective.
It's really
Makes
different.
us for an interesting mix.
Yeah.
It
sometimes.
does.
So,
Okay.
Okay, well, John, thank you very much. I'll walk you out.
Thanks for coming
I
in.
really appreciate your time.
Yep. Is this one saying Craig or George?
You're right, how presumptuous of me.
The next candidate is here, if you'd like me to bring
Yes,
him in.
Yeah, yeah.
please.
Come on down. You're the next contestant. Fire
I'll
chief.
let you sit here, George. And just grab a gallery seat.
Thank you.
You brought fans.
All right.
Family. Conscripted fans.
Saying they're not fans?
Yeah, right.
Conscripted fans.
Depends on the day,
They're
right?
supportive. It's a rainy Monday, so,
Yeah.
Welcome, George.
hi.
George, I'm going to start by asking you a series of questions.
Okay.
I want you to answer them succinctly but completely. So if you can answer them in just a few words, that's fine. But we've got quite a few questions to go through, so if you get stuck on the first question, we're not going to get to the rest of them. So, but I want you to answer each question completely also. And after I'm done with my questions, there may be a few questions from the board.
Okay.
Okay? So I'd like you to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and why the East Bridgewater Fire Department and the town of East Bridgewater is a good professional fit for you.
Certainly. My name's George Doucette. I grew up in Brockton. I moved to East Bridgewater in 1999 and immediately fell in love with the town. It's one of the classic New England towns. My kids attend school here at the East Bridgewater Junior Senior High School. Both of them play hockey, varsity boys and girls hockey. We're drowning in hockey in my family. It's more than it seems. As far as professionally, I've been an EMT since 1993, a paramedic since 1997. I became a call firefighter in the town of Pembroke in 1996 and had to leave that in 1999 when moving to East Bridgewater. Got on Braintree Fire Department full-time in 2002 and got laid off with 7 other people in 2003. I was immediately picked up by the Norwell Fire Department, where I began employment in August of 2003, where I still serve as a captain, paramedic, shift commander. I'm the department's grant writer. I served as the EMS coordinator from 2013 to 2020. On the side, I always had a side job. I worked for Fallon Ambulance from 1993 until 2015 for 22 years there, and then I went to Brewster Ambulance and served as a shift commander in the city of Brockton for their EMS system there, where I had 24 employees under my direct supervision, fielding a grand total of 26,000 EMS calls a year. It was busy. I learned a lot there. Personally, I spend a lot of time with my family, my 2 small dogs, which are like fur-covered lightning, and the kids, and I don't know if I mentioned hockey.
Yeah, you did.
Never stop.
Okay.
East Bridgewater is a good fit for me. The town of East Bridgewater is 17.5 square miles. My current organization is 23 square miles. Population difference would be 11,600 in my community that I serve now. This is about 14,600 people, I believe. Same organization, 24 staff members, administrative assistant, deputy, and a chief, doing a total of about 2,600 emergencies annually every year. It's an identical organization with a little bit smaller geography and larger population, which actually sounds better, to be honest.
Okay. In your view, is there a difference between management and leadership?
Absolutely. Management is process. Management is dealing with fiduciary things, administration of things, and the such. Leadership is people, and people are the organization. The people are the face of the organization. With poor leadership, what the public sees is a poor organization. With good leadership, the public gets a much better product from the fire department. Leadership is something that's granted by status, absolutely, but leadership isn't a promotion. It's a permission from the employees. Leadership is based on trust from the employees, and when the employees trust the leadership, you get better buy-in, and they're willing to follow the leadership. And that starts with an adage of how you're going to handle yourself as a leader. They need to be able to trust, and that means an open door. It needs to be firm, fair, and consistent. And with good leadership comes a liaison between the town government and the workforce, and that's imperative. There's times when the workforce has to do what they're told to do, and sometimes things have to happen due to budget constraints, et cetera, et cetera. But with good leadership acting as the liaison and a trust between the workforce and the leadership, they understand why that has to happen. And it prevents those rifts between the workforce and management.
Okay. What type of leader do you say you are?
So I would say that I would put myself as a transitional leader with an emphasis on servant leader. Obviously, you have to be adaptive. Everything in the fire service is different. Sometimes you have to be autocratic. Sometimes there's room for democratic leadership, depending on the incident. But when it comes to the people, being a transitional leader allows you to create an environment that they want to be part of. It makes it a we fire department, not a town of East Bridgewater Fire Department, which it certainly is, but it's their fire department, and they will want to nurture it, and they will want to grow it, and they'll want to be successful, because if it's successful, they're successful. And that takes a good bit of servant leadership to make that happen. I have to be able to be available to the people, to be able to give to the employees. And you have to do that with firm, fair boundaries so that you don't get taken advantage of by the employees, but you have to be there. You have to be their leader. And we want to empower them. We want them to grow. Every new employee that walks through that door could be the fire chief someday, or the EMS coordinator, or a lieutenant, or a captain, or a deputy. I'm not threatened by having my employees learn, and potentially learn more than me. Someday they will need to be in the roles that I'm in now, and hopefully will obtain.
Okay. The next few years will test the financial management and creativity of local government. Please describe your experience or ideas in dealing with a constrained set of resources and your ideas to contain or reduce costs while maintaining an adequate level of service.
So the beginning of that starts with actually identifying what is the adequate level of service. Surplus seems to be things that is always there, and everybody always finds a way to cut things from budget. Things that we like to think of as necessary might not necessarily be necessary to maintain that adequate level of service. So it comes with a metric of identifying what that adequate, that basic level of service that we need to provide is, and where is, for the lack of better, fat that we can trim from that budget. And there's always something to be found. We can always run more lean than we do, because the level we run at is what we're comfortable running at. Just like in any family, sometimes we need to not buy the good groceries and buy the groceries that feed the family. And that same adage rolls over into management of an organization. We'd have to look at where the money has been spent over the last 3 to 5 years and what the projections are. Obviously, the cost of even supplies to run an EMS operation go up annually. I mean, it seems to be whenever there's a budgetary crisis, the cost of materials go up, and that's hard to deal with, but we need to identify what's the must-have, is nice to have, and what we can do without, and we trim backwards from that. Obviously, with any organization, I know our budget currently right now is about 95% payroll. And you have to have people to make that happen. Nobody wants to see a layoff, because layoff does impact base level of service. So we need to look at what we can do to improve upon those things. And maybe there's forward projected ideas. We look at how the ambulance is being billed for now. There's other organizations that can do ambulance billing. I know at my current organization, we switched to a service out of Cambridge that does an amazing job with ambulance billing. I know that if we write down a license plate number, the moment they save that run report to the server, that service is billing the Part 8, the PIP, on your auto insurance, because that's first come, first serve. And our revenue went up quite noticeably when we switched. So there's other things that we can do, not only trimming, but looking at actually bringing income back in.
So who decides that level of service? Do you decide it, or the townspeople?
So that's two-directional. The townspeople have a say in what goes on. It's their fire department. You know, I think that there needs to be good public outreach. We have to discuss with the public we have to make ourselves available for what we actually do. I think a lot of people don't really know what they have for a level of service. They don't understand the difference between EMTs and paramedics. They don't understand what they have for assets available when they call 911. I know at my current organization now, we run one ambulance, one fire engine, and a ladder company. And when I do public education, I always ask the residents, what do you think is on shift right now? And I hear anything from 12 to 14 people and 3 ambulances and 4 fire engines. And I do the same thing. I chuckle. I say, wow, I would love that. And when I tell them what they actually have, I get a very big response of, whoa. And I tell them, we promise we will always make it happen. We will find a way to make this happen. However, they don't have an idea, and I think that's a shame. I think the public should know what they have. I think that there should be the fire chief on the public access TV or a well-run public information program to let them know what they have, what we do, what's available. This is your fire department. Tell us what you want from us. Then once you know that, we get to make a determination of how to adapt to the income and the fiduciary problem, so that we can develop a program that we can meet that bare minimum standard. And if we're not able to meet what their expectation is, have a solid explanation of where the money and the output didn't align.
Okay. What level of involvement have you had in budget creation and budget management?
So as a captain, I don't actually write the budget, obviously. One of my tasks currently at the fire department is to do the annual certified public expenditure report for the reclamation of Medicare funds. So every fall in September and October, I forensically analyze our budget. I have to break down where all the money went into payroll, personnel, benefits, maintenance and repair, operating costs for the building, heat, lights, gas, all of it. I always joke, come about the end of October, I could tell you what we spent on paper clips last year. That being said, I also understand with public finance, there's laws regarding this. You can't just take from one account and put it into another account. There's things such as line items, there's emergency transfers, and a lot of times these things need to go through either the finance committee or the select board for approval. A couple of years ago, our department had to look for an emergency transfer because we needed a fire engine because we had a problem with one of them, and that's a big thing, and it needs to be well spoken and well thought to be able to propose that to both the select board and the finance committee. nobody likes to spend extra money when it wasn't on the budget every year. We like to stick to the budget and not have to do things like that.
Okay. As the fire chief, how do you make sure everyone in the organization knows what's expected of them?
Standards. You know, as a fire chief, it's my job to understand the standards that everybody's held to. That includes the training provided by the Massachusetts Firefighting Academy, their responsibilities as a paramedic, both under the MOA with the hospital and the protocols. I have to understand the collective bargaining agreement, and that creates a standard that everybody can be held to. It needs to be a fair standard. It might not be my personal metric. I hold myself to a very high standard of performance on a day-to-day basis, but to hold every single employee responsible for my personal metric isn't fair if the actual standards and the SOGs and SOPs in the department aren't at my personal metric. That's a choice that I've made. I'd love to see everybody perform at their highest level. As a leader, that's your goal, is to recognize what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are, give them the tools, empower them to be the best that they're capable of being. But there is a basic standard that they're held to.
You had mentioned grants a little bit before. What's your experience in obtaining and managing grants?
Oh, I write grants. When I got promoted to captain in September of 2020, the fire chief took me aside, and I completely expected that I was going to be made the EMS officer because it's what I've done. I've drowned myself in EMS. My bachelor's degree is in Emergency Medical Services Administration. Like I said, I ran the EMS system in Brockton on my shift. I've drowned myself in paramedicine. And the fire chief took me aside and said, "You're not going to be the EMS officer." He said, "That do you know service? You know how to do this. You know it inside and out, every facet of it. You're going to grant write." And I was a bit flabbergasted because I knew that grants were horrible to write. That's how I walked into it. I said, "All right, we're going to do this." And I reached out to cohorts on other departments in the local area and said, "Please help." And I got a lot of help and a lot of guidance. I do the AFG every year, which we've had marginal success with only because people want things that don't qualify under AFG. AFG is very specific insofar as it needs to be a high priority item under their eyes. And some of the characteristics that they're looking for when you fill out the AFG is average age of what you're looking for. And if you were looking, say, for a hose load or new hose, and you've got hose that's in fact 30 years old, but you've also got 2 brand new hose loads that came in the last 4 years, that shoots your average age down, and they'll just reject it right off the bat. I've written grants through FEMA's BRIC program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure for Communities. We just were awarded last year a grant for $156,000 that I wrote. I worked for 3 years with MEMA on that one to get the award for that, for a generator for our public safety complex. We're going to surplus the other generator that's there and put it, I believe, at the water department is the current plan for that now. Last year, I was awarded $65,000 and change for heat and air conditioning at our headquarters building. I had a little help with that one because that was under green initiatives, and I don't know a lot of the environmental stuff in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so I had someone at Town Hall to help me with that part of it. I write the EMPG grants every year and get awards for that, and that's how we fund our CERT program, our Community Emergency Response Team, solely funded by the grants that I write there. A lot of the equipment we have at the fire department has come in on grants that are written. We just did the MARSARS ice sled. I did personal thermal imagers for all the firefighters, ANSI compliant jackets, a fantastic gear drying rack that we just put in. I believe that was $7,000. My grant total last year was $206,500 in awards.
Okay. So as you're aware, I'm sure, retention of firefighter medics seems to be an ongoing concern across the Commonwealth, really across the nation. What can be done to retain these highly qualified firefighter medics in East Bridgewater Fire?
So I've thought a lot about this over the years. When I was hired, I was asked questions from the other side of the table. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 20 years? Longevity just does not seem to be part of their metric anymore. I've even gone so far as to ask my junior personnel who have been paramedics 3 and 4 years, how many places have you worked? And the average 3-year paramedic will tell me I've had 4 different jobs. They follow their friends, they follow the money. Longevity is just not part of what their mindset is at this point. And I know this because I've sat on the interview board for everyone we've hired from July of 2007 forward to this point. And you see a lot of people with a lot of things on their resume, and they just don't seem to stick. Having said that, how do we retain people? We talked about leadership earlier, and leadership is everything. To be an approachable leader with a transitional style where I am the leader and I'm here for you. I will do anything that you do, and you will never hear me ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. People like to say, we create a culture. That's an idea, not a plan. There needs to be a plan in place where that leadership is there, and that leadership creates a we environment. This isn't my fire department, it's the town's fire department, it's the residents' fire department. There's 14,600 people that this fire department is for. And having said that, to become that transitional leader, that servant leader, and then we empower the senior people. We say, we need you to mentor the junior people. Let's bridge that chasm between the senior and junior people. And not just with knowledge of here's where the axes are, here's where the chainsaw is, here's where the fire hydrants are, but what is the history of our organization? What's the history of the collective bargaining agreement? How did we get to where we are, and why are we who we are? And that creates a workforce that's going to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to work today, not I have to go to work today. They want to show up at work in the morning. And when they're not at work, they wonder what's going on at work that I'm missing when I'm not there. And they want to be part of it, and it becomes theirs. And when it becomes theirs, we become the destination that other people leave departments to go to. This department has a robust collective bargaining agreement to attract outside help. And with a little bit of nurture, it could attract a lot of outside help, and we could be the destination.
Okay. The next two questions are situational questions. When you were promoted to your last position, or current position, what was the big challenge you faced, and how did you handle it?
Hardest challenge of getting promoted from within is I'm not one of the workforce anymore. I'm their boss. People who are my friends are now they're my charges. I'm responsible for them. I joke around and I always say I'm not taking part in the shenanigans anymore. I have to control them. And that can be tough. That can be very tough. I have very close friends after 22 years working there. And what I did was I said to everybody, I'm here for you, but I don't want us to get in trouble. I want us to succeed. I want us to perform at a high level. And we had a couple of really great sit-downs, and I got buy-in from them. And I'm so proud of my people. They're high performing. They sometimes I look and I feel like a proud dad watching them. But it was a challenge. I was terrified of it because people who are my friends are now my charges.
Okay. So you respond to a food on the stove fire. Fire is quickly extinguished. The house is full of smoke. Firefighters open windows in the bedrooms to let the smoke out. As you walk down the hallway as the fire chief, you see one of the firefighters taking jewelry off a dresser and stuffing it in his or her pocket. How do you handle that situation?
That's going to be an immediate face-to-face. That's going to be an immediate supervisor-subordinate situation there where I have no option but to confront that employee at that point. There'll be no accusations made until information and research is done, but obviously it must cease at that point. If I witness the employee put the jewelry in their pocket,
Yep.
I'm going to involve East Bridgewater law enforcement right off the bat. That employee has rights under the law. I'm also going to make notifications after the incident. That employee is going to get yanked right off the line right away. I'm going to put my second in command in charge of the incident at that point, and that employee and I are going to go back to the fire station. East Bridgewater Police are going to be present because, that employee has rights. There'll be notifications made up to obviously the Select Board and Human Resources as to what's going on. We're going to control the flow of information. We're going to make certain that everybody else involved at the incident understands that this is a zero-fail evolution. They are not to speak a word of this to anybody else without someone from the department present giving them permission to do so.
Okay. So you talked about your group. What kind of an officer would your firefighters say you were?
They call me Dad. I laugh too. Apparently, I'm getting older.
If you were older, they'd call you grandpa.
Yeah, right.
Valid point. Some of them are so young, I think that they look like my 17-year-old son sitting back there. I can't tell them apart, to be brutally honest. They would say that I'm firm, and I'm fair, and I'm consistent, and I don't ask anything of them that they wouldn't see me do themselves. I had another officer working overtime on my group last week, and when we were coming out of the house with a patient, I was carrying the back of the stair chair, and this officer said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I work with them. We're a team. They need to see what I do." As a result of that, I have fantastic buy-in from my group. They know when we sit down to dinner, Dad's the last one to sit, and Dad doesn't pick the fork up until the rest of them are eating. That's my job. They'll tell you I never tell them that I'm cold or I'm hungry or I'm tired, because I can't be that person to be their leader. Whether I'm cold, hungry, or tired, they come first, and they know that. And they come to me, I'm flattered, they'll come to me with their personal problems for life advice, even outside of work type of stuff.
Okay. What kind of employee would your boss say you were?
He would say that I am dedicated, performance-driven, high function, that I'm a stickler for the details. I try not to let anything fall through the cracks, although sometimes I do, but I usually catch it after the fact. But he'd also tell you that I have an amazing ability to have a 50,000-foot view of what's going on, and I try to remain very objective. I respond, I don't react. I think about what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say, because obviously all of that has consequences. And being brash and impetuous is just never beneficial to myself personally or the organization.
Okay, we've had many interested, extremely well-qualified, experienced candidates applying for this position. Why should the town of East Bridgewater and the East Bridgewater Fire Department hire you as their next chief?
This is home. I live here. My kids go to these schools. I'm in love with this town. I've been transported for a back injury in the East Bridgewater Fire Department ambulance 10 years ago. 5-star service, I might add. It's home. And I'm not shopping for a fire chief job. I've never applied for a fire chief job before, and I never thought that I would until that opportunity presented itself in my current organization. I've been there for 22 years. But this is home, and I would love to take my 32 years of public safety experience and make this my capstone project in that career, leaving this department as a high-performing organization that's able to respond even better than they are now to anything, because someday I'm going to be in the grandpa range, as you put it, and I'm going to be the one that calls 911 in my time of need. And knowing that I mentored and fostered this group, and they're coming to take grandpa to the hospital, yeah, that's an amazing thing. And I think where this department is so similar to my current organization is going through some of the struggles with retention that my organization went through about 10 or 15 years ago. I could bring a lot and hopefully help stabilize and promote this department into the future in a very positive fashion.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Questions from the board?
Peter, you have a
I'm up, okay. Right. George, thanks for coming in, and thanks for the information. I think, having gone through your application as well as your resume, a lot of the things that I usually bring up in these conversations have been answered for sure. I will say the one thing I really like, I'm a homebody, as everybody knows. Like, I wasn't born here like yourself. I was born in Brockton, so I still got a little south side in me. But but I call myself an East Bridgewater because I've been here for so long, and like yourself, really like the community. The one thing that I think is unique to East Bridgewater, and I don't know what happens in Norwell or some other towns, is the ability of our leaders, our leadership, to communicate amongst themselves. DPW, police, fire, schools, wherever it is. They have an uncanny way of being able to take away this board or take away our town administrator and really work things out. I guess my question to you would be, having been in Norwell, is there a lot of communication, a lot of direction, or a lot of work done with, let's say, the superintendent or the DPW director, and what has your involvement been with that in your career there? So
internal and external stakeholders are imperative to the organization. I've always taken a personal pride in the fact that I promote these types of relationships, because operationally on a day-to-day basis they're extremely necessary. As a fire chief, being the emergency management director, those relationships have to exist beforehand. Personally, in the town of Norwell, I do a lot with the recreation department. I do their CPR training for both the public and their staff. I've done CPR and first aid training with the DPW most recently, which I was surprised, but they reached out and I embraced it. I got to meet all of them. Council on Aging cookouts, which we do every year there. We fund that with the Senior Safe program, and we do a cookout in July where they all shuffle in and we barbecue all day long for them. The water department, we've arranged tours and gone through the water department with them. The department heads certainly meet on an official basis, but the department heads have to be able to feel comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, et cetera, et cetera. I know the other day I ran into the head of the DPW. We were on a medical call at one of our skilled nurse facilities in town, and when I came out, he's standing there, and I was like, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, my dad's in here right now. And we talked for probably 10 minutes after we cleared up. I think these relationships between the department heads are absolutely imperative, and they foster good relations. I mean, I pride myself in Christmas and Thanksgiving every year. I cook. I like to cook. I cook for them. And I will get a gigantic turkey, and I'll have the on-duty police, whoever the shift for the police during the day is in, and we do dinner with the police and fire all at the same table, because it's important. We work together. We're all providing something to the town.
Right, appreciate that.
Carol?
One of the things that comes up is always this divide between the younger members of the department and the veteran members of the department. How would you see yourself as chief sort of bridging that gap and helping to build relationships there?
So you can't just walk in and say, I need you to. People do much better when they understand the why rather than the what. And getting the buy-in from the senior members of the department. You've been here 10, 12, 13, 15 years. You know things that these junior people don't know. And when you're gone, if we don't pass that along, it'll get forgotten. These things will never have existed. And this is your opportunity to form them into who they need to be you someday. And that closes that chasm between the two groups. And I understand everywhere that exists. The senior people want to be the senior people, and the junior people just showed up, and you will speak when you're spoken to. And that's a horrible, horrible way for things to go on. When I was a junior person, I was lucky. I'd done the ambulance in the town of Braintree for years before I got on the fire department. So I was the only person who ever got hired, walked in, and knew everybody. But I saw it with my peers that I got on with that didn't. And I actually, at that point, went out of my way to make certain that they knew they could. The younger people need to know that they can approach the senior people. Sometimes the senior people are grumpy. Sometimes they're not. We're old. But they need to, the senior people also need to understand the importance of being able to explain, again, not just where axes and the whatnot are. There was an Edison plant here at one point. That concrete slab next to the service station on Union Street used to actually be a train depot. There was a sanatorium right on the other side of the common. There's a lot of history in this town, and unless we pass history on and the importance of these things, they get lost. And simple things like the history of the town become a great way to soften the relationship of, okay, this is what you're doing wrong, this is why we have to do it the right way. I mean, I think the thing that a lot of people, I won't say forget, but overlook is, I might have been to 15,000 people that have heart attacks in the last 32 years, but when Mrs. So-and-so calls 911 having chest pain, this is her first incurrence with the 911 services. This is as real as it gets for that individual. And having everybody be on the same team and nurturing each other and helping each other along is going to make a better product for the residents that are calling 911.
Thank you. Also a Brockton, born and raised.
Southeast, northwest?
West, near the fairgrounds.
Much better.
Don't tell Peter that.
West Chestnut Street.
Ettrick Street. There you go.
Same neighborhood.
Yep.
Grafton.
Moved here in
Sorry,
97.
Selectman
Grafton's
Stone.
where it's at. Grafton Street was where it's at.
Right behind
That's not
George's
that far.
Cafe.
That's right in the.
Right behind
Close to West.
George's
I could've went to
Cafe.
West or South.
Can I join in anytime?
No.
Are you from
No, you're from
Brockton?
Boston.
No, he's,
Jamaican Plain.
Oh.
yeah.
George, what is the retention rate in Norwell at this time?
So it was horrible. When I got hired, it was a revolving door. My slot opened up because someone graduated the fire academy, left, and went to Holbrook Fire. Wanted to graduate in a Holbrook Fire uniform. So it was a flurry of activity. It's much more stabilized now. My junior people in my group now are fantastic, and they are committed, and they want to stay. And part of that is, some emphasis on looking at resumes. There are some fantastic-looking resumes out there. And job interviews being job interviews, this is a commercial of the best of me. There's none of the, I just feel bad. I didn't mention any of the bad, there aren't any, but any of the bad things. So it makes interviewing very difficult. What I have really started looking at is how many, have you been at, if you look at my resume, I stay places. I was at Fallon Ambulance for 22 years. I was there longer than some of the Fallons. And I only left there because I was offered the position of a field supervisor in the city of Brockton, where I grew up. And who doesn't want to go home and work? Again, who doesn't want to work at home? And I embraced that opportunity. And it was a difficult decision to make. So I started looking at longevity, and I started thinking about things in terms of, you are a fantastic prospect, but are you going to be that same fantastic prospect here in 5 years? We've certainly had a couple of people leave here and there for military things, or you can't compete with someone that wants to go to Quincy and gets on Quincy Fire. You can't compete with that. But that's more of a one-off at this point than it is anything other.
Okay, thank you.
And all of the things that I mentioned about mentoring and leadership, et cetera, have fed very heavily into that.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay.
I'm good.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
George,
Josh,
thank you very much.
for
Thank you.
coming in.
I thank the board for the time and the consideration. I didn't even get the job and I'm being escorted out.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
And thank you, Fiona,
Thank
for
you all.
joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
I like them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have an agenda. Do we have anything else that we're,
Katie was the only other thing,
okay,
Oh, on the agenda, really?
yeah.
okay. All right, folks. Do you need to take a 5-minute recess, or do you want to just get into what we've been doing for the last hour or so, and the last, seems like 6 months?
Let's feel like that. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
We'll be back
Second.
after these commercial messages.
All right.
Good evening again. We are back in session here. Once again, it certainly wasn't made any easier tonight. Then we had, again, 2 fantastic candidates that I think would be a good fit for the town of East Bridgewater. Carol, what do you think?
I liked them both. I thought they both had good answers, relevant experience, and personalities to do the job. I think I could be happy with either one, but I will say I feel a little bit stronger about our first interview, John DiZallo. I liked his enthusiasm, and I liked that he had some financial background and things outside of the public sector. Me, who's like the whole life of the public sector, I liked his answers on a lot of things. Just a little bit more.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, 2 quality candidates for sure. Keep wavering based on the information. I mean, obviously, I like the idea of, somebody that's understands the area a little bit, but also, that background. Having both the private and the public sector background is great. I think that's a big benefit. As you guys know, I talk about that all the time.
Yeah, we do. Some of them.
I mean, I don't know, I think it's, and you're both gonna hate me when I say this, I think that, to try to make that decision right now, like, it's gonna be tough for me.
Oh, no.
I know you're gonna, I know. I mean, again, like I said, I'd like a little bit more, myself personally, I mean, if you guys wanna vote, we'll vote, but, I'd like a little bit more time to kinda
I
take a
liked
look.
what John said when I was just looking over my notes, you asked him about a building, and I liked
Yeah.
that he had experience with that,
Yeah.
with the Stonehill things, and then the school that they built, because if, we're potentially building a school, and he's already been through that process, I think that
Yeah.
was a good.
Yeah, there's both sides I could see
Thing.
again, but,
One of the things that, and again, not to reiterate, but the public and private, municipal sectors, the community work involvement that John is involved in, coaching all these sports, being with the community, and that's something I don't think we've seen anyone that's had that much outside of the fire department with his involvement continuous with the community, where hopefully, if he was brought on, he would bring some of that to us too.
yeah. I mean,
I,
if you guys wanna make a motion, I mean, that's,
Are you sure?
yep, that's,
We can come back if it's gonna make you more comfortable. I don't wanna rush you.
no, I mean, I think that you both kind of, like a candidate, so, I mean, if that's the case, I'm not gonna, honestly, if it was something where I felt like, one was outweighing the other one, I probably would, say that, but it sounds like, you both took the time to look at the resumes and then obviously listen to the interviews, and we can certainly go from that. Like I said, my whole thought was, coming from where we did we did have a couple of strong candidates. I think that first round that we did, but I think we all thought one was extremely stronger than the others, and obviously that didn't work out. But at this point, I could see either one.
I said, again, we have seen an awful lot of very qualified candidates, and you're right, we did have one, through the first interviews that we all thought would be a perfect fit, didn't work out. Based on how many candidates we have seen, I think that John does fit everything that, at least that I've been looking for with his interview tonight. But I don't want to, if you need some more time, then what's another as the world turns?
No. Again, I could see both. I mean, went through both of them a few times prior to tonight's meeting and listened to both interviews. I can see both sides, but.
And we've had a lot of that even the first time around when we had one. The second, third, and fourth were very close together also. Carol?
Do you want a motion?
Yes.
I make a motion that we offer the position of fire chief to John DiZallo.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Go to work.
All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.